Hey folks, DonLasagna here, and today I'm taking part in the Project Nano V movie started called One Excellent Scene, where a bunch of really awesome creators are making videos about scenes they love in the X-Men films, shows, games, etc. It's a really awesome idea, so I figured I'd throw my hat into the ring and talk about one of my favorite scenes in all of the Fox X-Men run. So, what is that scene? Well, it's actually technically more than one scene broken up by two other scenes, but it's in the same place, and it's really one scene broken up into chunks. But yeah, what is my favorite scene in the X-Men Fox run? Well, this. Now look, this one's may be an odd choice for some. It's one from the older movies that a lot of people rag on. It's not a fight scene, at least not until the very end. It isn't some big twist or speech or whirlwind revelation, and in fact, a lot of it goes over things we've already seen in previous scenes. But to me, this scene encompasses everything that worked in the original X-Men movies. All two of them. So, let's go through this scene piece by piece and construct a list of what this scene, and by extension these movies, nailed. But before we can do that, we need to talk about what came before this scene. So, mutants in this universe are superheroes that get their powers from genetic mutation. They're essentially the next evolution of humanity. The humans in power fear the mutants, and as such, the mutants become a metaphor for the oppressed because their power is both how they're born and also something that the establishment fears. In these movies specifically, it's a very loose metaphor for the struggles of LGBTQ people and the gay marriage debate whose tensions peaked in the early 2000s. Humans are scared of mutants being in school with their kids, the government is taking action on them without listening to anyone in their communities, and other humans in places of power have made it their mission to exploit and kill them. Some mutants can hide what makes them oppressed and blend into society in a way it considers to be quote-unquote normal. Others can't or won't because they shouldn't have to. So yeah, none of this is very subtle, but it doesn't need to be. X-Men has in-your-face powers, and the ideas they communicate are just as overt. It's not a perfect one-to-one metaphor either, but I don't think it's trying to be. Instead, it's trying to be the emotions and fears surrounding the subject matter of the metaphor, literalized into things that make for cool action scenes and complicated moral dilemmas. There are two big conflicts in the X-Men universe that overlap into one another. One is the mutant versus human conflict, where humanity fears mutant kind and tries to take them down through various means, and the mutants just try to survive in an increasingly hostile world. The other is the mutant versus mutant debate, where two groups of mutants are duking it out over how they should treat and respond to the human threat, whether they should try to kill all the humans and become the dominant species on the planet, or try to integrate with them peacefully, represented in the battles between the Brotherhood, led by the metal-bending Magneto, and the X-Men, led by the telepathic Professor Xavier. These conflicts are the basis of X-Men 2 and have boiled over into an attack. Stryker, a military scientist who has a very personal hatred of mutants, just attacked Professor Xavier's mansion, a boarding school for gifted students, which in reality was just a place for mutants to live without having to worry about people like Stryker. Stryker was looking for Cerebro, a power amplifier for mutants with mind powers, but our heroes don't know that. What they do know is that Stryker took this excursion as an opportunity to bag and tag a bunch of their friends and remind mutants of the constant danger they're in just for existing, again harkening back to the experiences of many oppressed communities. A group of mutants manage to escape and are on the run. First, you have Wolverine, the immortal warrior who constantly has 6 knives on him at all times and whose centuries worth of memories was wiped out during an experiment done by Stryker. But Wolverine doesn't know that. He just vaguely knows, based on their meetings during the attack, that him and Stryker have history together. He's sort of the guardian figure of the group, as the rest of the mutants are just kids. And again, the metaphors for oppressed communities, and in particular LGBTQ people, are not very subtle. You have Rogue, who has internalized shame for the things she is shunned for, something out of her control. In her case, her power is draining the life out of anyone she touches, and also gets their powers if they're mutants. She first manifested her powers from her first intimate experience, which ended not great. She's dating Bobby, aka Iceman, and their unique situation has made being physical about their relationship difficult. Bobby's power is to create ice. His view of his mutant identity is very survival-oriented. He He stays in the closet whenever possible, only feeling comfortable letting his guard down in Xavier's School for Mutants. He still wants to hold on to the normal life he once had, and he even hides his identity from his family, either because he doesn't want them to worry, or he doesn't want them to have the opportunity to reject him. This often brings him at odds with Pyro, who has turned the oppression he receives from his power into a shield, and who has attached a lot of his identity to his constant oppression. And who can really blame him? His kind is hunted when in his eyes, it's the humans that are the weak ones. He is very cocky and revels in the power his mutant abilities afford him. He's someone that says, if the world is going to treat me like I'm a monster, no matter what, I may as well roll with it and get all the benefits being a monster offers. The conflict between Pyro and Bobby's point of view on their powers is arguably literalized with their powers themselves being opposite. Pyro's power is manipulating fire, a destructive element, whereas Bobby's power is about manipulating ice, a form of water, a life-giving element. You could also argue this is a micro-level debate of the mutant versus mutant conflict, even down to opposing mutant powers. Professor X controlling the mental and understanding the minds of others, versus Magneto manipulating the physical to protect his own kind and harm others. So even just going into the Bobby's house scene, there is all this context swirling overhead. And after this scene, the real thrust of the movie begins, because all the mutants, even the bad ones, team up to stop Stryker. So this scene is both a calm before the storm and also pulling the pin on a grenade that the first hour of the film built. Thus begins the beauty of this one excellent scene. So the scene begins with the mutants on the run, and Wolverine suggests that they go to Boston because that's where part of the X-Men team, Storm and Jean Grey, were going last to pick up another mutant. Bobby meekly says that his parents live in Boston, so Wolverine drives there, figuring they could lay low until they sort out wherever Jean and Storm are. Only there's one problem. His parents don't know that Bobby's a mutant. And they think that Xavier's School for the Gifted is a normal boarding school for gifted students. So already going in, there's this tension. When they get there, there isn't anybody home. Already you have Pyro's character represented by the constant flicking of the lighter. His whole identity, even down to the way he fidgets, is built around the part of him that society shuns. His identity as Pyro, as a mutant. And Bobby responds by telling him not to burn anything.
Don't burn anything.
Which brings me to another thing I really liked about this series. Its very unique sense of humor. I call it mutant humor.
When will these people learn how to fly?
It's basically when the movie is poking fun at mutants in a way that relays their unique situation while also building them up as awesome for having their powers, so it allows the audience to both laugh at a joke and also be part of the power fantasy of being a mutant. Anyway, Bobby and Rogue are upstairs, and you get a scene where Wolverine tries to use a phone and fails, showing him as the ultimate boomer that he is. Rogue changes clothes and Bobby does a no-no, and then we get to Pyro. And I really love this scene. Watching Pyro enviously looking at pictures of Bobby enjoying himself with his family is heartbreaking, because he's looking at a life that he'll never have. This moment says so much about the character, how Pyro's tough guy mutant's first exterior is a lie he's telling himself to avoid the pain of his longing to be loved and accepted by society. His whole tough guy exterior is like him saying, yeah, all that acceptance stuff, I didn't even want it anyway. I like being an outcast. The scary mutant Pyro has become is him making do with the hand he is given, not his first choice. He has made his suffering into something that makes him better than other people in order to give meaning to the senseless injustice that he experiences. And what do we do right after this? We contrast Pyro's longing for a normal life to Bobby's struggle to fit into his normal life. On a lighter note, this scene also establishes something very unique with these X-Men movies, showing powers impacting normal, everyday things with a cool twist. Rogue kisses Bobby and breathes ice because she has his power. Bobby freezes the coffee. You see this in other scenes as well, and it's cool in so many ways. It's a power fantasy for the audience, it creates a fun bit of world building, And it also grounds the mutants in our world and makes them more relatable in a way someone like Captain America or even Spider-Man really can't be. In the MCU, you don't really see a lot of the heroes using their powers outside of beating people up, so it's nice to see powers used in other contexts. Anyway, we cut back to Logan and we have a good bit of mutant humor. His hypervigilance, both due to his heightened senses and his centuries of combat experience, lead him to draw his indestructible claws on a very normal part of suburban life, showing how disconnected he and thus the other mutants are from it, playing back into the mutants versus human conflict. Then, the parents come in. Wolverine sheathing his claws becomes another bit of mutant humor, and Bobby tries to keep the lie going for one last time before finally caving. And now, laying low at his parents' place has become Bobby's coming out moment. And we see Bobby struggle with having some of the privileges, but still being an other in the eyes of society. Pyro's lighter fidgeting bothers the parents in the same way it bothered Bobby earlier, showing Bobby's parents' influence on him while also playing into the humans versus mutant conflict in a more subtle way. Of course, though, this is the X-Men, so most of this isn't very subtle.
When did you first know you were
a mutant? We just didn't realize
We still love you, Bobby. It's just this mutant problem is a little...
What mutant problem?
Complicated. Have you tried not being a mutant?
We also get a good scene where Wolverine shows some sass.
What exactly are you professor of, Mr. Logan?
Art.
When Bobby reveals his powers, his parents are weirded out, his brother runs away, and Pyro is eating it all up, watching joyfully as Bobby experiences the same rejection from the normal world that he does, bringing him down to Pyro's level. Then, in a callback I only noticed when making this video, the cat eagerly jumps on the table to lick the ice because Wolverine cut their tongue earlier. You know, it's the little things. Finally, we cap this coming out moment off with another bit of mutant humor.
This is all my fault.
Actually, they discovered that males are the ones who carry the mutant gene and pass it on, so it's his fault.
Then this all escalates when the brother calls the cops and lies about the mutants harming him to incite the cops to use lethal force.
911. Please state your emergency.
I need the police. There are people in our house. They won't let us leave.
Which, to anyone who's been watching the news lately, should be a pretty obvious metaphor. Then Storm and Jean Grey call, Logan tells them where they are, and they're on their way.
We're on our way.
And Storm? Make it fast.
And then the cops show up. One of the cops tells Wolverine to drop his knives.
This is just a misunderstanding.
Put the knives down!
In which he replies,
I can't.
which shows us the unique aspect of the mutant versus human conflict. The dangers the mutants pose the humans is not based on individual actions, but a fear of an unknown amount of potential violence that is part of their identity, inseparable from who they are as people. It doesn't fit neatly into the metaphor for our real-world oppression, but it makes the X-Men an interesting moral dilemma with less clear answers, which is part of the appeal of the franchise. Anyway, Wolverine tries to disarm himself, but it doesn't matter. The cop was trigger-happy, which, again, not subtle, doesn't have to be, and that causes everyone else to drop to the ground. Rogue, Bobby, but not Pyro. Full of anger at the humans who stormed the mansion and took his friends, anger at the cops that, to his knowledge, just shot their guardian dead, and anger at society in general for portraying him as a monster and, in his eyes, forcing him to play the part, where the tough guy exterior becomes more than a front in a fight in a food court, but a genuine threat to the establishment. And this anger leads to one of the best lines in the entire series.
You know all those dangerous mutants you hear about on the news? I'm the worst one.
And he lets it out. All the rage has been building up literally explodes out of him, as Bobby's brother watches every one of his prejudices be confirmed from the safety of his house. This is a perfect encapsulation of one of the forces that perpetuates this conflict. The humans, out of fear, force the mutants in a position where they feel they need to defend themselves to save their lives. thus quote-unquote confirming the humans' biases that led them to attack the mutants in the first place. It's a vicious cycle of fear and hate. Nonetheless, there are those that still feel empathy for humans in the world that they find themselves in. One of those people is Rogue, who steals Pyro's powers to put out the flames. And of course Rogue would have that empathy. She's someone whose mutant powers scare herself in the same way that other mutants scare humans. Again, playing back into the mutant versus human conflict. Then, Jean and Storm come in and we get our last bit of mutant humor. Wolverine shakes off his headshot, first to the shock of the mutants, and then to the even bigger shock to the cop that shot him. By the way, I love that Wolverine sees all the burnt cop cars and looks back at Pyro just disappointed. But unlike a Marvel movie, X-Men doesn't let this joke undercut the seriousness of the scene. We end with Bobby looking back at the biological family that rejected him in disappointment, maybe for one last time, before moving on with his newfound family of mutants. And that's the scene. The entire scene is 8 minutes and 18 seconds, but it covers more ground than most feature films. In less than 10 minutes, it built on the conflicts of these side characters so well that they became main ones. It deals with basically every idea of this movie and franchise on a micro, more personal level. It's showing how mutants exist in day-to-day life, how they're viewed, how they feel about being viewed that way, all while using a little bit of special effects to go a really long way. Anyway, thank you for watching my video. Please check out the other creators in the playlist, which I will link down below in the description. Seriously, everyone's bringing their A game and are probably putting my video to the shame, and I'm just happy to be a part of it. If you want more stuff from me, I made something bold and original. An hour-long critique of the Disney Star Wars movies. No one has ever done that before, and you won't get it anywhere else. Alright, that's all I got. Bye!